Hey y'all, it's Jaha Zainabu and welcome to Storytime with Jaha Zainabu 15 slash 365. 15 is a big deal. I say that every day. Cause it's a big deal. Let's see, today, I don't know what random story I'm gonna begin with. I should start preparing that before I turn the camera on, but I don't. I like to let it, oh, you know what? One just popped in my head. But it's a story about my son. And it's a funny story, but I try to, I don't know. Now I tell stories about my son. We'll see. If another one pops up, I'll tell that one. Today, I'm going to talk about why I write. And not just why I write, but I posed a question on Facebook today, and I said, why do you write? And some people answered with some really good answers. So I'm gonna read those answers. And I invited, just before I turned the camera on, I invited more people if they would like to send in answers on why they write on Facebook for the time that I'm here. Then I'll read those answers as well. So yesterday I talked about writer's block and writing through writer's block. And I know, and I even said yesterday, it's not an easy thing. It is a tough thing. You sit down and, pretty hard conversations come up, pretty hard topics come up, and many of them are quite triggering. And you have the opportunity in those moments to choose one of those topics and write through it. Nobody says you have to be there for an hour or a half hour. Write 5 sentences. And for me, there's something about writing, putting words and seeing the words in black and white on paper. And I lived. I didn't die because I got it out of me. And I can go further a little bit further. So that's what I talked about yesterday. That was story time 14. So if you haven't seen the video, check it out. Check them all out. They're good. I am giving class here. Okay, serious. So today, okay, I have my notes from yesterday, but I want my notes from today. Why I write. Let's see. For me, why do I begin writing? I've said in many videos before, I began writing when I was very young. I began writing in a journal that I called, when I was a kid, I called My Famous Stories. And that journal was the first place and the only place for a long time that I would do my emotional venting. I knew people. I had friends, but, friends. I have friends, but as a child, I didn't have friends that I would tell really personal things to. And as a kid, I didn't really have the language for really personal things that I was dealing with. And I was dealing with some pretty heavy stuff. Um, at that time, I am 55, and as a child, growing up at that time, that was during a time when our parents were not our friends. I mean, they weren't our enemies, obviously, but they weren't. That was during the time when, I ain't one of your little friends. And they weren't one of our little friends. They they worked hard and kept roofs over our heads and put food on the table and maybe made sure we did homework and made sure we had clothes. Um, and I think that was, well, I almost said that was true for everybody. I don't know. Maybe I believe that was true for most of the people I knew. I don't know. I don't. Well, growing up, I don't remember. Maybe you do, and if you do, I'd love to hear this. Um, I don't know that I knew children who um, had these deep uh, and in-depth talks with their parents about their feelings. Um, I certainly didn't know any children in therapy. No, I didn't. Like, I think in my community, the answer to everything was kind of give it to Jesus. And there was no real instruction as to how to do that. It was just give it to God. Um, and that's how we dealt. For me, I think my first friend was my journal. Um, I don't remember having, imaginary friends. Maybe I did, but I don't remember that. Um, but I do have very clear memories of writing in my journal all the time, all the time, all the time, all the time. And that's where I put my feelings and in a way that a child would express her feelings. Um, yeah, I'm really like thinking, I'm trying to think of I don't remember any child having those kind of conversations with their parents until I got to high school. And it was strange to me then. Like, one of the girl, I was a cheerleader in high school, and one of the girls on the cheerleading team, we were in the locker room changing, and a friend of hers, well, she was having issues with a friend of hers who was liking a boy she liked, and in the locker room she was expressing that she had sat down with her parents the night before and she was having this great discussion with them about how she should go about handling this friend who liked her boyfriend, and like as she was going on and on about what she had spoken with her parents. And I was like, you did what? I mean, I didn't say this to her, but in my mind, I was like, you told your mama and dad? Y'all talked about it? Yeah, yeah, I don't remember feelings being a big conversation with parents and children when I was growing up. I don't think that it was something just specific to my household. I just don't. And maybe it could have been, but I don't know. Um, I don't remember. Yeah, so for me, that's why I write. Because that was my first place where I knew that I could deposit my thoughts. Um, and I, as a child, they started with, in my famous stories, they started with stories, um, things that were hard for me. I put on other people, like whatever, if there was something that I was dealing with that was hard, um, like a teacher I thought didn't like me or something like that, I created a character and it was her, not me. It was her. Um, and so that was the beginning of why I started writing. Um, and then as I grew, I didn't, I, I grew, my language grew, my ability to put words to my thoughts and my feelings. I kept a journal. I always kept a journal. I don't remember a time in my life I wasn't keeping a journal. I mean, obviously, of time since I began writing, that I wasn't keeping a journal. I don't remember that. Um, where, some girls wanted new clothes, I wanted a new notebook. That was a new journal for me, baby. You had me. Um, but as I was saying, as I grew, and had language for my feelings and thoughts, I was more expressive. I did not have the need to hide so much behind other characters. Um, I do remember that there were still some things that I did not talk about in my journal. I remember that. I remember what those things were. Um, um, and mostly I didn't because I was afraid of. I said yesterday in the video that I was afraid of naming names. And I think that's part of why I didn't mention certain things um, in those journals. So I began, I grew and I wrote for um, my healing. In my, still in my teenage years, um, I don't remember. I don't remember an adult in my life that I felt comfortable expressing my feelings to. Um, there were adults in my life that were kind to me. I'm not trying to. It wasn't. It's not that story. I had good people, good adults, good aunts, good uncles, good parents. I had that. I had those people in my life, but there was still no one I felt like, can I talk to you? This is what I'm feeling. Like I didn't. I wasn't that. I wasn't that kid. I didn't know how to do that. I never saw that happen. Um, I didn't. I didn't know how I would begin that conversation. Um, yeah, and if you were there in my life and you were that adult and I don't remember, my bad, but I don't. Um, I know that I had ample opportunity with the adults in my life. Um, I don't remember the door being open to, like, do you have feelings that you want to discuss? And then I took advantage of that. I don't remember that. Although I do remember I had an uncle, John. My Uncle John has passed away. But growing up, I had an Uncle John who used to date us, the girls, his nieces. And by date us, I mean he would do things like I remember he called me one Monday night. I was in high school, and he called me one Monday night, and he said, "You want to go to the movies with me on Friday?" Which was weird because I don't remember us ever hanging out at the movies before, or hanging out really alone. But I said, sure. I loved my Uncle John, and I thought, okay, sure, I want to go to the movies. And he said, you see how I'm calling you on a Monday and asking you on a date for Friday? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, if a guy is not doing that for you, then he's not the right guy for you. And looking back, I was like, wow, that's how you do it. But in the moment, I was like, okay. And then, so he did show up on Friday, and he picked me up, and he opened the door for me, and but every single thing he did, he said, "You see how I said I would be here at 7 o'clock, and I showed up at 7 o'clock. Well, if a guy is not doing that for you, then that's not the guy for you." But and so everything he did, he would mention. So if a guy is not doing that for you, he's not the right guy for you. And we did eat dinner, and then we went to the movie, and I'm pretty sure that somewhere in that night, there was space to relax and talk, but we had not built that opening beforehand. So I like all that to say, I did have really cool adults in my life. I just nobody I felt like I could just regularly talk about my feelings to. I did have cool folks, my Aunt Janice was the fun aunt. She is only 10 years older than I, and so there were like things like when I made the cheerleading squad, I think I told her first, or there were fun people in my life, but the emotions was a different and a brand new category that I didn't know who to talk about that to, or that was something people actually even talked about. Didn't everybody have a journal? So I grew, as I grew, my reasons for writing was to get the story out, to for my healing, I should say. I jumped ahead of myself. So that was in my teen years. So in my young adult years, after high school, it was to get the story out and to just get clear. Get clear. I remember after I graduated from high school, the next week I flew to Atlanta, Georgia, and I went to Spelman College for summer school. So it was my first time in Atlanta, probably my first time out of the state. And so I'm in Atlanta, and these new things are happening. Even then, I kept a journal. I'm a teenager now. I'm a big girl. I'm grown now, so it's not my famous stories anymore. Maybe it wasn't called anything, but I did keep a journal. But all these new things are happening, and so I needed a place for those new things in my life. I needed a place to make sense of things that were happening to me. While I was in Atlanta, I met a guy who was going to summer school at Morehouse. And the young women from Spelman and the young men from Morehouse, we would hook up. I mean, not hook up. Maybe they did hook up. I don't know. But we would gather. And as time, as you know, the weeks progressed, we began to partner off. And I don't remember the guy I was kind of liking, but we went out on a date, and we were both not from Georgia, but he knew the city and the buses more than I did, and so he took me on a tour of Atlanta, and we hopped on a couple trains, and hopped on a couple buses, and met up with a couple of his friends, and he kissed me, and it was the first time um, a young man kissed me like that. And I remember, as I'm a teenager, and I remember thinking, like, how did his tongue get in my mouth? How did that happen? And so I remember I was staying with my uncle Thurman, who lived in Atlanta, and I wrote about that, like, and it was beautiful. So I wrote to get that story out. A boy who liked me, who I also liked. So I wrote that. I wrote my own list of why I write, and I wrote down, I write, and this is true for me now. I don't know when I actually officially started this, but I write to get better. To know me is to know I always have some kind of writing project, and I think practice may not make perfection, but practice does give improvement, and that's what I want to be a better writer every day. I want to be a better writer every day. I want to be a better storyteller every day. I want to be able to look into the camera and tell you stories and recite poems to you, and give you language of my emotion. And I want to do that better every day. And so I practice every day. And so I that's another reason why I write. I write to get better. Many of you know, in 2013, I took on a project where I wrote a poem every day. In 2015, that poem, and those poems went on, I posted them on Facebook and on my blog on Blogspot. And then in 2015, those poems became a book published by World Stage Press. I don't know that I progressively got better from January to December. I don't know that. I think, and I don't know then if it was my determination to be better from January, in December than I was in January. I think then it was just about, am I disciplined enough to do this? I think that was the goal. Obviously, when you write a poem every single day, some poems are better than others. But I did it. I completed that. And so that was the goal, and I did it. I write also to tell our story, Black stories. What I see. I'm not a reporter, but ain't every poet a reporter. I write to tell what I see in our neighborhoods, in this country we built, in our families, in our schools, our homes. I write to tell our stories. Because now more than ever, I think that it is very important that we tell our stories. With one book after the next being banned, I think that it's important. Yeah. Yeah. So not just our stories, I also write to tell my story. I want my son, especially, to know details of my life that maybe I didn't tell him, or tell him in detail enough. It's my way, me leaving journals and even this collection of videos is my way of leaving me here with you. So that you know from me, this is who I am. This is what I thought about this. This is what I experienced. This is what I went through. So I write to tell my stories. I was talking to a friend of mine, Jessica Gallion, as some of you in Los Angeles may know. And I was talking to her and I asked her, I said, why do you write? And I wrote down some of the things that she said because I thought they were dope. And she said, I write to decipher between what's true and what's not. And I thought that was dope. I write to decipher between what is true and what is not. She went on to say, I write to help people better understand me. And I will adopt that. I write to help people better understand me. I have this very heavy irritation with people cutting me off. And I realize that sometimes I take a long time to tell a story, but I want people to give me the space to let me do that. And it bothers me immensely when I don't get that space. And the truth is I don't often get that space. That's true. I do have a friend who does give me that. And someone that I talk to on the phone pretty regularly, and we give each other that space. It is new for me. I don't really, except for him and my son, I don't get that. I live with people cutting me off right when they feel like they know what they're going to say, what I'm going to say. Like, oh yeah, that, and then they run with it. And then they start their own thought. And it does bother me. But I just live with it. And so that's why the friend that I'm speaking of, I like talking to him. Because I like being able to tell a story slowly. But my son is the same way. He doesn't like being cut off either. Maybe he got that from me. And he tells a story slowly as well. But there's something about taking your time and letting it build and, adding sauce to it. But when I am cut off like that, I don't, and then I take the conversation back, I don't, it's not the same. Because I have to deal with that I'm irritated with, that I'm cut off in the first place. And so I like Jessica's response. I write to help people better understand me. And I do that too. And then I posted, I told you, on Facebook. And here's another response. I'm going to read some of the responses. Who said this? This is a response from my Joy, my friend My Joy. My Joy said, I create because it is my clearing space. My therapist, my best friend. It never leaves and never tells me I'm wrong. It is a way for me to give myself the love I'd give to other people. It saved my life. And that was from my joy. I feel that. V. Kali responded with, I write because I'm wrong, so I'm wrong so much of the time. LOL. V, you are not wrong, love. We love you. Who said this? October Blue gave a great response. She said, I write to ensure my story comes from truth of experience, to kill my fears, to honor words, because I remember when I didn't have them, to honor my ancestors. I write because you have to call out what it is before you can heal it. I'm going to repeat that. You have to call out what it is before you can heal it. I write to be free. And that is a quote from October Blue. Pam Ward said, I write to sort ideas in my mind. I love communing in a literary way, listening to other voices, supporting each other as we hold space. Writing gives me ability to voice feelings of beauty or the atrocities we face and to poetically, politically engage. Pam Ward. You better write, Pam Ward. I love that. I love that. Sharice Tucker said, to make sense of the world I live in and to make sense of the world that lives in me. Baby. Shaka Campbell says, the why, because the question is, why do you write or create? Shaka said, the why changes and evolves, but I think it's mostly a way to make sense of the insanity in my head or around me. Maybe insanity is not the right word, but regardless of the what, writing helps me navigate it and put it in more consumable chunks. Poets will just answer a fucking question, won't they? Thank y'all for responding with these great answers. Carol Leela Kramer said, I write to heal myself. My writing gets it out of my head and onto the page. To relieve me of the pressure. I love that. To relieve me of the pressure. I write to have a record so I can know that what I think did happen. So I can know I'm not crazy. I'm not losing my mind. I write to validate myself. That way, I need validation from no one else. I write for me. I love that. Mike Bonifer said, I write to tell stories that help me make sense of the world, and in the hope that my stories can help others make sense of it too. Thank you, Mike Bonifer. I love your stories. Your stories do help me make sense of the world and help me see your world better. So there are, for every person who dares to write, there is a new why. I'm curious as to why you write or why you create, why you dance, why you paint, why you sing, why you do what you do. When I was first beginning to deal with the bouts of depression and mania that I would go through, writing was very important to me, because I didn't understand what was going on in my head. I didn't know, I didn't call it depression. Back then, depression was almost a sin. Like, if you believe in Jesus, you don't need to be sad and depressed. It wasn't looked upon in my community. I don't mean in the big world, but in my community, in my world, it was not something that we looked upon as a mental illness or something that a lot of people went through. And so I didn't call it depression. In the beginning, I called it being sad for no reason. And I have many journal entries about being sad for no reason. That was my language for it. I'm sad for no reason. So I would write about that. Depression, I didn't know the word depression. Depression was for white people who were rich. Rich white people were depressed, not black girls, black boys, not regular black folks were not depressed unless you were a sinner or something like that. And I was not that. I was very much a church girl. Yeah. And then, and I wrote about, I wrote because I think for a long time, I felt like writing was my only safe space. Yeah, it was my only safe space. Somebody mentioned, I don't remember who, but somebody in one of the quotes that I read said, I said that he or she wrote because she wanted to make sure that what happened did happen. Like, I'm not crazy. I think it was October Blue. I'm not crazy. I'm not losing my mind. And I wrote a lot about that because I felt like, am I crazy? I don't think crazy was what I asked myself. I wrote because I mentioned this watch yesterday's video. Seriously, Storytime 14. Watch that one. I grew up very awkward. Not very awkward, subtly awkward, which is almost worse because the very awkward got some kind of attention, like, whoa, something's not right with that one. But I was just subtly awkward, enough to warrant side eyes from my peers, enough for them to know I wasn't as regular as they or as cool as they. I was not cool kid. And I did grow up and go to bed often with what's wrong with me. Like, why don't they like me? Or and I have friends, so it wasn't that like the big they didn't like me. I just felt like I grew up and lived too many years as an adult feeling like there was a me to be liked, but they couldn't know all of me because all of me wouldn't be liked. Yeah, not all of me. Because there was a weird part of me that couldn't be liked. And I never really got a good grasp on what that part was, because it was different every time I was confronted. I dressed weird. And I did. I was very much that Punky Brewster kid. Um, or whatever, so all of these are my whys for writing. These are the things that I would deposit into my journals. Um, and I just felt like my journals were the only safe space um, for emotions. I didn't have examples, or no one ever presented to me, like, when you look for a boyfriend or husband or something like that, that you look for someone who you can feel emotionally safe with. That was never, that, that was never, the conversation. Like, even in church, they would like have these like Bible classes for women. I don't remember them having them for men, but these Bible classes for women on, I guess, what things to do for your husband, or if you were looking for a husband, things that you do. And you cook and make sure you clean, and it was cooking and cleaning, and it was that. And I even remember one Bible class, and I will not say the teacher's name, but one Bible class, the teacher said, uh, just about being loyal and being faithful. And he said, and you stick by your husband. And I don't remember how this came up, but something about the husband cheating. And he said, well, you don't divorce, ladies, you don't divorce your husband because he cheated on you. And the way he said that, like, come on, ladies, you tripping, And but there were, even in like in those classes, there was no um there was like, what how you give your bodies, even sexually. Like, you don't I don't remember how he phrased it, and I think I was the only kid in the class. Kid like high school. I wasn't kid. I was big kid. But I think I was only one minor in the class. But there was a way that you present your body. You don't say no. I mean, you could say no if you were sick, but you know. So the whole conversation was like, if the message to me was that my body is not mine, like, I really don't feel like my emotions are safe. Um, yeah, I don't, and even in my when I started dating, I wasn't a dater early. Like, I didn't date in high school. Um, and when I did start dating, the message to young women my age, was that, you want a man who could provide for you. Um, and the implication is financially, not like provide safety and comfort, and someone you could, go to with your emotions. Um, and so I think I looked for that. And um, and I had guys who had, decent jobs, but none of them, I don't remember. I mean, and I dated some nice guys, nice enough, I guess. Um, I don't remember having any boyfriends that um, I felt safe enough to say, yeah, this is how I'm feeling, and this is, this is how I'm feeling, and it's not good, or this is how I'm feeling and it's cool. Or, there was always a thing in the back of my head that would be used against me. And on the few times that I did dare express my feelings, there were times that it was used against me or thrown in my face. So I wasn't taught that that was something that you look for. And consequently, it just was never something that I had. All of this is why I write. So why I write? Because I knew that I could tell my story in a journal and I wouldn't be interrupted, and I could be as vulnerable as I wanted to be, in a way that I could not be with my partners. Now, while I never had, and I'm really going through scrolling through boyfriends, like, I don't want to say never, and watch some boyfriend was like, wait a minute. But if you were there, I don't remember you. I do not. I never had a boyfriend who I felt comfortable, like, really expressing deep inner thoughts. I did not. But I did have some nice boyfriends. You know, I had boyfriends that would take me on cool dates, and we could have fun, and we could laugh, and we could talk, and we could share certain things, and things that were, you know, kind of surface, you know, and then depending on how we knew each other, maybe dig a little deeper. But to the level of what was in my journals, I never had that. I never had that. But I did have really good friends who were men. In fact, one of my best friends in the world is a man. Shout out Sage. And I have amazing sister friends. Shout out My Joy. I have great sister friends, but I'm talking about men here. And with Sage, I can, not just Sage, I have other friends who are men who I can tell very deep stories to. I, though, have, you know, never been partnered with, like, coupled, like, in a romantic way. I could give my body. I could meet a man that I could give my body to. I could have sex with him, but tell, like, deep thoughts to was a different story. And when I remember times when I want to put my toe in that, like, maybe I'm safe enough to do that, and then something would happen to show me, you are not safe here, baby. Baby, you are not safe here. My father died, and when he died, I was living in Georgia, and my father was in California, and my mom called, and it's about maybe 3 or 4 in the morning, and it wasn't like her to call me during that time. And when she called me, she was crying, and she said, she was crying, and I said, he's dead, huh? And she just said yes. And then we hung up. And she was like, are you okay? And I said yes. I said all the things to make her feel okay. But at the time, I was dating this guy who lived not far from me. And it's 3, 4 in the morning, and my father died. And of course, I called him. And he answered the phone, and I said, my dad died. And he said, you don't want me to come over, do you? You know what? No. You stay there. You stay there. So, like, it's things like that that if I thought maybe he was somebody I might feel like I might could talk to, that shut that down. Like, if I can't get you to get in your car and come over, maybe my feelings are not that safe with you. How about that? So, there was that. Um, yeah, there was that. I think that that's the thing that I've I've always longed for. I mean, and I'm very comfortable alone and single. Um, because if I can't have that level of safety, that level of friendship, that level of I can empty my stories with you. That level of feeling like my heavy is not too big for your listening or for your listening. If I cannot have that, I'm good. And I, I have just been good. Um, and I'm good being good. Um, with, you know, do I have people like that in my life that I can talk to? I do. I have people that I can pour into. They are not my romantic partners. And I have, at this age, become resolved to that's okay. You know, having those people and cherishing those handful of people in my life is I have become resolved to that is enough. If And for me, Prince Charming, I'm not I wasn't a fairy tale girl like that. That Prince Charming would ride in on a big Cadillac. Um, that wasn't my dream. It wasn't my dream that I have like the tall, dark, and handsome. I mean that's always great, but I really have always longed for just that person that could be my person that I was also romantically involved with that I could spill. Um, but I do thank God for um, the vessels in my life where in which I get to spill. I am thankful for those and for those folks in my life. But that's if I have a dream, that's mine. Just like that. That is my love language. That kind of somebody creating that kind of safety for me. Um, so all of that is why. Um, all of that is why I write, why I create, why I paint, because I have so many stories um, that are locked inside of me that I want to let out. So yesterday, I keep referring to yesterday because yesterday was actually dope. I'm telling you, I'm telling you, I'm telling you. So I'm referring to yesterday because yesterday, um, one of the questions that I asked, so I asked a lot of questions yesterday, but I answered all of them. But they were for you to, take opportunity to ponder and answer if you will. But one of the questions that I asked was, the scenario was if you're in a hospital and you are going to die and you are resolved, you're not panicking, you're resolved, like, you know what, this is happening, and you're given a pencil, a pen, and paper. And the question was, who do you write that letter or poem story to? And my immediate answer is, I'm writing the letter to my son. And so yesterday, and I didn't think about this yesterday, but it's in my head today. So yesterday, I said I would definitely write the letter to my son. And I don't know, I said yesterday that I don't know what I would say to him that I haven't said before. Like, I've said I love you. I say I love you every time we talk. I don't know. I said I didn't know. But today, I think, given that opportunity, I would name names. I would name names. My Uncle John, the one who took me on the dates when I was a kid. So my Uncle John, he knew that he passed away a few years ago. I think about 6 years ago. Yes, about 6 years ago. And before he died, he knew that he was going to. And my Uncle John was also a poet, published also. And we talked before he died, and he said that we had a very serious conversation that will always live with me. And he said that there were things that happened to him when he was a boy growing up. And things that nobody but him and the person who did these things to him only know about. And he said that he didn't want to die and nobody else know. And so he told me. And he said, I don't want you to say anything while I'm alive. But after I'm gone, I don't care what you do. And when he died, there was never a time while he was telling me the story, after he died, even now, there was never a time that I felt like I'm going to expose this, I'm going to tell this thing. I felt like he didn't tell it, and I'm not going to tell it. But I do hold it. I do hold it. I think there, I maybe that's where I got it. Like, I don't, me not naming names. So I think that if I had to write that letter, or that poem, I would name names to my son, not about my Uncle John's secrets or a secret, but about my own. I've told the stories of situations, but never publicly said it was this person. And I have lived with, I have said it over and over in journals, but not publicly. And I have lived with somebody, doing something to me as a kid that I didn't tell. And then I grew up, and I grew up knowing that he did other things to other girls. And I lived with like a shame around that. I lived with, had I said something, maybe they wouldn't live with that, too. I didn't, I really give myself grace even around that. The truth is, I had a father who, and this is a message to the fathers, who would do anything, for they to protect their baby girl. I had one of those fathers. My father and I had a very close relationship that was complicated in a lot of ways. Alcohol got in the way. My father would kill for me, and he would indeed kill for me, and that got in the way too. And as a girl, I was faced with, say this and my dad goes to jail, or don't say this. So it was a thing I took for the team. Right or wrong, or all of that. All of this is why I write. I could go on. We have come to an hour this quickly. I could go on and on about why I write. I am interested in your stories. Why do you write? How often do you write? What do you write about? Let me know. I hope that you're well, my friends. I thank you so much for going on this journey with me. Watch the videos at your leisure, in any order you choose. I love you. I do, Take care. Till tomorrow.